Greetings. Thank you for joining us for the 2017-2018 ESSA Consolidated Compliance Report webinar. We are the Special Revenue Services team, and we will be previewing this with you. Today is August 16th, 2018. Our agenda will have welcomes brought to us by Allison Fears, the Assistant Director of Special Revenue. As a FYI, when we do go into the compliance report, we're going to be skipping Title I, Part C. And then we'll close out by going into e-grants because there are some pieces there that you need to be aware of. Even if you are a member of the SSAs, or if you're not a member of the SSAs, there are some pieces you will have to complete individually as an LEA. If you need additional assistance with resources, you can always visit us as region10.org/Title I. And this is the list of folks who's going to be serving you today. Allison Fears, the Assistant Director, Laura Griffin, Program Coordinator of PNP, myself, Lauren McKinney, I'm a consultant here on the Special Revenue Services team, and then Jennifer Phillips, who is a consultant in teaching and learning, who oversees Title III, Part A.
Welcome everyone, I'm Allison Fears, a new Assistant Director for Special Revenue here at Region 10. As we go through the report, if you have any questions or need additional support, please feel free to give me a call. My number and email are on the slide. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to work with you, and I hope you have a great school year.
That was Allison Fears, our Assistant Director of Special Revenue. Thank you so much for joining us. And now we're going to jump into the 17-18 ESSA Compliance Report. Now, as an FYI, we're going to move around a little bit because we want to make sure that Laura Griffin as well as Jennifer Phillips get the chance to bring you their information. So we will be jumping around the compliance report. But we want to start off with letting you know that if you are a member of the SSAs and a non-member of the SSAs, you have two separate different deadlines. If you are a non-SSA member, the 17-18 Consolidated Compliance Report is due to be submitted on September 28, 2018. If you want to get it in early, feel free. For SSA members, your deadline to submit your reports for Titles 1 through 4 that you are part of the SSA is August 31st, 2018. You can access those compliance reports on region10.org/SSA. You'll click on the third tab, which indicates compliance report. Again, if you are an SSA member, your due dates for Titles 1 through 4 is August 31st, 2018, and you can access those Google Forms on our SSA member webpage, region10.org/SSA. At this time, Jennifer Phillips is going to come up and go over the compliance report with you, specifically for Title III. So please excuse me as I click and clack through this. We want to make sure that she's able to deliver her part before moving on to her next obligation for the day.
Good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Jennifer Phillips. I'm the bilingual ESL compliance consultant in teaching and learning. So I'm here to help you with the compliance report for Title III ELA, English Language Acquisition, and Title III Immigrant. Just a little bit of a heads up before we get started. Some of the changes that have happened are the majority of the PNP questions have been taken off of the compliance report and are a separate schedule. With one exception, and that's question 7 under use of funds for the the Title III ELA. So when you're looking at your application and comparing it to your compliance report, just know that possibly the numbers of questions may not be aligned as they were before because of the removal of those questions. Also, good news, Part 8, where you needed to list students by gender and ethnicity, that section is gone, is no longer required. And I just wanted to remind you that your compliance report and your application must match. So if you have something on your application, you need to make sure that's reflected in your compliance report. And again, if there's not something on your application, it would be on your compliance report. You have 3 choices on several of the items: yes, no, or not applicable. If you did do it, of course, click yes. If you did not, click no. And if it's not applicable, it is perfectly okay to select NA. If you have any questions about that, please don't hesitate to contact me. And lastly, documentation for the Title III compliance report must demonstrate that the services provided to English learners was above and beyond what was provided to the general population. For example, if you held a literacy night that is school-wide or district-wide, that does not meet the obligations of Title III ELA or Title III immigrant. You would need to have an additional literacy night targeted specifically for those populations and documentation that that was the population that was served during that event. So the documentation must clearly indicate that the event was held specifically for ELs and or immigrants in order to meet the requirements of the compliance report. I'm going to turn it over to Lauren, who's going to walk you through several of the other schedules, and a lot of what they're going to tell you, you will follow the exact same process when you hit the Title III report. And again, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to call me. I'm Jennifer Phillips. My number is 972-348-1050. Thanks so much.
All right, guys, so as an FYI, Laura's going to come up and cover that 3099 with you. But before we do that, we wanted to actually show you what that 3099 looks like as an LEA. So thank you, Italy ISD, for allowing us the opportunity to kind of log in and have a look at your eGrants profile. So we're going to go straight down here into the 1718 ESSA Compliance Report. And we're going to have a look at their 3099, which Laura is going to go into detail with you about now.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the PR 3099, your private nonprofit school equitable services compliance report. As you begin this report, as you can see, the first two questions relate to the number of private nonprofit schools within your boundaries. You'll need to put a number there. And then if you had eligible PNP schools, if you had schools outside your boundaries where you had students that were eligible for Title I Part A funds. So remember, it is possible with Title I to have students who reside in your district and attend a PNP outside your district who are eligible. So you need to put a number in each of those columns. If you put 00, you are basically done. So congratulations to you. If you did not put 00, your next stage is to go to Part 2, program participation, and indicate with a yes, no, if you had any private nonprofit schools participating in that particular program. Similarly, underneath, you'll put then the number of participating PNP schools that received equitable services under each of those programs. And on line 3, the number of eligible PNP students that received equitable services under each program. Please note on Title II Part A, because those funds are for professional development, a student number is not appropriate there. It does say a number of staff. So you'll be entering a number of PNP staff that received equitable services on that particular box. Then you're going to proceed on to your program implementation questions. On each of these, you're going to answer yes, no, or NA. Hopefully the answer is yes or NA if you've been following all the guidelines. And then you're also going to enter in the box an explanation of your compliance status, what documentation you have readily available at your district to reflect this. So on the first one, timely and meaningful consultation, you're going to need to click yes, no, or NA, and then enter in the box what documentation you have. For example, affirmations of consultation, sign-in sheets, meeting notes, emails you exchange with the PNP, these types of things. Similarly, on the next program implementation question, did the LEA maintain local control of applicable program funds being used to provide equitable services? Yes, no, NA. And then for each individual program, you'll need to say what documentation you have. That could be materials inventory of materials that are located at the PNP. It could be expenditure logs, purchase orders, these kind of things. As you continue on to question 3, documentation of equitable services amount used and detailed explanation. Okay, for each program here, you can use evidence such as your breakdown of the equitable services amount, how you calculated it for each individual PNP. You can put things here such as documentation that in your meeting you shared the amount with the PNP, that you explain to them that they had to spend it all or utilize it all, receive all those services within the grant year, that it's not going to carry over. These types of items. And please do review your guide to answering program implementation questions, because some of these are new, and I know it helps me to look at the suggestions that TEA has given us for each kind of documentation. Question 4 looks a lot like question 3, documentation of equitable services administration amount. Okay, so that's the only word that's different here, administration. This is where if you used part of the equitable services amount for the PMP toward the administration of the program, for example, in Title I Part A, maybe you had used, the PMP wanted to use a third-party contractor, and there were administrative costs related with that. Some sort of cost that you had related to the administration of that Title I Part A program for the PMP. This is where you would put the documentation that you have of those administrative costs. Now, for the other programs, you really should not have an equitable services administration amount. Title I Part A is the only one where you can use part of the equitable services amount for administration. So I think a lot of us may be explaining on these other ones. Notice there's no NA here either. It's just yes, no. So if you didn't use anything on administration, I would put yes, and then I would put no equitable services funds were expended on administration for this program. So a little tricky there. But I do want all of you to remember that even if, whether you are an SSA member or whether you are just an individual district, you will be submitting this schedule on your own. Charters will not submit this schedule because it doesn't apply to them. But if you are in our SSA, I will help you with the information, but you will have to go into eGrants. You will have to save and submit. Similarly, if you are not in the SSA, but you are a member of Region 10's PMP Cooperative, I will email you information to support your completion of this, but you will have to complete it and submit it yourself. So if you have PMP questions, please get in touch with me, Laura Griffin at Region 10. Thanks.
So I'm going to back up, take you back to the draft application that we have, and start over with that GS 2110. Laura's going to hang around for maybe another 2 minutes, because when we get to Title I Part A, there are a couple of PMP questions that she's going to go over with you guys. So this GS 2110 looks exactly like the one you see when you log into eGrants. So just as an FYI, if you are a member of the SSAs or not, everyone has to do these documents, the GS 2110, which is the contact information, that PR 3001, the 3099, the 6200, your unsafe schools, and then your homeless students enrolled report. If you are not a member of the SSA for something, let's say you maintain your own Title I Part A, then you would have these documents here, plus your own Title I Part A there. So for everything that you are a fiscal agent, or Region 10 is your fiscal agent for, you will have to do our individual Google Forms, the compliance reports that you can find on region10.org/SSA. However, you will still need to log into eGrants to do these 5 documents. These are a requirement if you are an SSA member, and if you are a non-SSA member, you must log into eGrants and do these pieces. Now, the 2110 is just you updating your contact information. You're going to list your primary contact and your secondary. And as a reminder, that secondary contact must be a different person than the primary. While the eGrant system will fully allow you to type in Lauren McKinney in both locations, you do not want to do that. That is not the preferred way of doing this by the agency. It should be 2 separate contacts. That way, if something happens, there is an alternate who can answer any questions as pertains to your funding, your grant funding. The only time you're going to fill out this portion down here at the bottom where it says name, telephone, and email is if the contact is different from your primary or secondary. This is your 3001. I briefly want to remind you what this is. This form was new at the beginning of the 17-18 school year. Each LEA had to come up with a goal, one strong, solid goal that the LEA was committed to following for the next 3 to 5 years. You are, as an organization, saying we are working towards this and we are committed to the process and the resources required in order for us to accomplish this goal. So when you're actually within the 3001 itself in e-grants, and I'm not going to log into Italy's because then you'll see their personal information, but when you're logged into your own e-grant system, what you'll see is what will be available is the goal that you actually selected at the beginning of the 17-18 year. So as an LEA, if you said, we're knocking out part 1, recruit, support, and retain teachers and principals, what you will see is your goal inserted into the PR 3001 itself. So you'll see your SMART goal there. The second portion, did the LEA meet the identified 1-year performance SMART goal listed in part 1? That's a yes or a no. If you did not meet it, just in a concise manner, because they only give you 1,000 characters, specify why you did not meet it, and then indicators of progress that you have toward meeting the SMART goal. It's not a bad thing if you did not meet it. If my goal was to hit 82% in whatever the area was, and my LEA came in at 79%, keep in mind that your goal overall is for 3 to 5 years. So if this year's benchmark, I missed it by 2 or 3%, that's okay. Just acknowledge it. And then in number 2, you're going to list what indicators of progress you have made towards meeting the SMART goal. You still have, again, the 3 to 5 years to meet the overall goal. Did the LEA continue the performance measure in the 18-19 consolidated application? That should be a yes. If you not meeting it, so failure to meet it, let's say that 79% example again, instead of the 82%, that is not a good reason to cease the goal. I want to continue with it because, again, you have 3 to 5 years to meet that goal. Now, if you were to randomly have sudden, and with the Hurricane Harvey stuff that occurred during the 17-18 year, if you had such a drastic change in your demographics or your needs based on your LEA needs assessment, you see that, you know what, this goal over here would be a better one for us to tackle for the next 3 to 5 years, then that would be a reason to perhaps adjust or alter your SMART goal. But failure to meet it in and of itself is not a sufficient reason to say, I'm scrapping this SMART goal and I'm going to come up with something brand new. Did the LEA change ESSA funded programs or activities in 18-19 application based on progress towards meeting the SMART goal? That is a yes or no. If you did modify, you're going to go ahead here and describe how the LEA reviewed and or modified the program and activities to ensure that you're making progress. This funds budgeted portion is where a lot of people are kind of getting a little confused, because it says, did the LEA spend at least 90% of funds budgeted on that PS 3001 for activities aligned to this priority? The confusion is coming into place because some people see that and think that we're referencing the entire Title I Part A allocation, if that's where you pulled the funding for to accomplish this goal. So if my Title I Part A allocation was $100,000 and I set aside $10,000 in order to be able to accomplish the goal for this 17-18 year, they're not asking about 90% of the 100,000. They're asking about 90% of the 10,000 that I set aside at the beginning of the 17-18 year to accomplish this goal. So they're wanting to know if out of that $10,000, did 9,000 of it at a minimum be spent towards achieving the goal? If it's a no, in a concise manner, go ahead and list in the corresponding box the difference in how the budgeted amount different from your actual expenditures. And again, you have 1,000 characters, so don't overdo it, but just in a concise way, explain what happened. This recommended use of funds section. The TEA has a very specific way that they see these recommended priority strategies, if you will, here on the screen. If you go to the TEA's website, there is a very specific way that they see strategic compensation as a strategy. There's a very specific way that they see instructional leadership development focused on the observation/feedback cycle. If you did not follow that to a T, it is okay to select no on that box. That's fine. It does not hurt you. I see these kind of as field questions as the agency is gathering data statewide to see, okay, how many of our LEAs are actually using the strategic priority strategies that we provided. So if you did it to the T, go ahead and select yes, and then indicate the boxes accordingly as to which funding sources you use for those. If it is a no, select no. And again, it does not hurt you to select no this year. This is your 3001. What follows is the same questions, and then repeat it for our strategic part 2 as well as Part 3. And you had the option of selecting Part 4 or coming up with your own Part 5. But as a reminder, once you're actually in the e-grant system, you're only completing the portion that applies to the strategic priority that you committed to at the beginning of the 17-18 school year. Because your information is imported in, you won't even see the rest of these. They'll be there, but they'll be grayed out if you did not have a goal for it. That was the 3099, which Laura has already covered with you. So now we're going into Title I, Part A. So number 1, LEA parental involvement activities. So this is not new. Make sure your expenditures are listed here. Title I, Part A, services to P&P students, not including administration. Laura's going to go into more details for you.
Right. Certainly this line is just where you're going to put the amount that you spent on Title I, Part A services to your private nonprofit schools, except if you did have expenses, Title I expenses related to the administration of the program. For example, you used a third-party contractor and there were administrative fees related with that. Whatever expenses you had that you took from that equitable services amount for the administration of the program, you're going to want to pull that amount out on line 2 and fold that into your figure on line 4, which is the line for administration. So line 2 is just for the services, not including administration. The administration you can include with your other administrative costs on line 4.
Line 5, if you have any professional development activity expenditures that will pay for out of Title I, Part A, list that there. As we know, homeless students attending campuses not served by Title I, Part A, you can list your expenditures there for that. Neglected delinquent, your Title I, Part D, but you can also pay for that also out of your Title I, Part A is there for you. And then transportation for foster care children. If you did any additional or other strategies throughout the year that you utilize Title I, Part A funding for, say your paraprofessional staff, you did some additional training or something for them, you can also list that here. Part 2 is your school-wide campus programs. Go ahead and list expenditures for your school-wide campus budgets. Part 3 is the same, but for targeted assistance. This gray box is here because it will pre-populate in the e-grant system your totals. As you add expenditures here, it'll total it out for you down here. Part 4, student population. This section is grayed out because you do not have to physically put those numbers in this year. Yay! PEAMS is going to take care of that for you, which is yet another reason why your PEAMS data needs to be accurate. That's going to be imported from PEAMS for you for everything with the exception of ages 0 through 2 and then 3 through 5 because that information is not in PEAMS. So if you're operating school-wide program that serves this population, make sure that you go ahead and indicate it there, also for targeted assistance.
On private nonprofit, obviously, those students aren't in the PEAMS system, so you are going to have to enter individual numbers here. These are numbers of private nonprofit students who were served by your Title I Part A program, not the students in the whole school, only the students that were actually served by that Title I Part A program. So go ahead and enter those. Hopefully you've gotten that information from the P&P with the grade level, the gender, the ethnicity of those students, and you can enter those students here. My tip is just make sure that your totals equal, that your total by grade level, by gender, and by ethnicity should obviously all be the same number.
All right, moving on to Part 5, program implementation. I am not going to spend a lot of time here. Just know that it is exactly the same as it was before. It comes straight from statute. It references in this very first one what programs you have with the coordination and integration of your federal, state, and local services. Go ahead and click yes, no, or NA. You want to put it yes, because this is an area that, again, it's straight from statute. So when you accepted the funding and went in and did that ADC, beginning of your 17-18 year, you were saying, I'm going to do these things that are a requirement of the grant funding source. These following requirement pieces under Part 5 are required if you are receiving this federal funding source. So this should be a yes for all, but if for some reason it is a no, you click no. And then if the compliance status is no or NA, you have an explanation of compliance status here. It gives you 500 characters. So again, you want to be succinct in explaining why you are non-compliant there. If you have artifacts, so you clicked yes for this for compliance, those artifacts might include meeting agendas, sign-in sheets, meeting notes, an LEA plan showing program descriptions, or other locally created resources or artifacts that would support and attest to the fact that you are doing program coordination and integration, you click that other box and list that there. So again, all of the questions that follow are straight compliance pieces, but you want to make sure that ideally, yes, everything says yes because it's compliance, but if for some reason you have a no or NA, just make sure that you document sufficiently in the explanation boxes the compliance status and why that is. So I'm going to click through these because those are exactly the same, goes into parent and family engagement, then your school-wide program as well. And then it rounds out this part with the program evaluation. If there's additional information that you feel is vital that the agency be aware of, please include it in Part 6. That's additional LEA data. You are limited to 1,000 characters. Title I Part C, as we mentioned before, we are going to skip for the purposes of the webinar. However, if you have additional questions and need assistance with this, please feel free to reach out to us and we will make sure that you get assistance with completing the compliance report for your migratory children. Your Title I Part D, it's going to be similar as well. We do have a couple of LEAs within our region that do receive this federal funded source. So if you do and you have questions about how to actually complete this when it comes from at-risk populations or neglected programs, your corrections facilities, let us know. Same thing with the student participation piece. They have provided definitions for you as far as what's considered a long-term student, as well as an unduplicated count of students served. Gender questions are here as well, as far as how many are participating in each of the above mentioned programs. If you need additional assistance with this for subparts 1 and 2 of your Title I Part D, please, again, let us know. We're here to be of additional support and service to you. Next, we are transitioning into Title II Part A. Now, if you selected and chose to transfer your Title II Part A funding out, you'll click a yes, and then it'll ask you what percentages you chose to transfer into where, to what other sources. As you can see with Title II Part A, you had the option of transferring to Title I Part A, Title I Part C, Title I Part D, Title III Part A ELA, Title III Part A Immigrant, Title IV Part A, and then Title V Part B. So if you chose to transfer any of this out into any of those sources, they want you to go ahead and just indicate that there. If you had any redirected underfunding that was expended for any of these activities, the activity expenditures, they want you to go ahead and indicate this here as well. Some of you had the option of actually reaping your funding as an option with your fiscal management. If you chose to reap, you would say yes. If you're not eligible, you'd say no. If the answer to that is a no, you chose not to or you weren't eligible to reap, it will close that out for you. Moving on to Part 3, Program Expenditures and Activities Participation. These are straight out of statute, so these are recommended strategies, things that you can do as far as utilizing your Title II Part A funding. As an LEA, you can improve the instructional leadership capacity of principals, supervisors to coach and develop principals. You also have the option of doing strategic compensation initiatives to reward, recruit, and retain effective teachers, which ties into our statewide TEA strategic priorities. You'll see P&P there as well for number 5, professional development that improves classroom instruction and student learning, as that is an option for that source, and Laura's going to provide more information.
That's right. That is your only option for spending the equitable services amount. So hopefully you're going to put your whole, as far as the dollar amount under the P&P column, it should be the entire dollar amount that you expended on Title II equitable services for P&Ps. Those costs should all fall under professional development that improves classroom instruction and student learning. And on line 5, I'll also note when you include a number of staff, you can go ahead and add that number of P&P teachers that were served by this program with your LEA's number of teachers that were served, so that those are all captured there under the number of staff column on line 5.
The rest of this schedule, the PR 3000 Title II Part A, comes directly from statute again, similar with Title I. When you selected Title II Part A in that ADC at the beginning of the year, you were saying that you were going to be doing these things fully. So that should be a yes for all of these, but if there is a no or NA, you are required to go ahead and just list an explanations of compliance status. That is going to be the same for all of page 32, which is the rest of that. Part 5, if for some reason you decide that you want to provide additional LEA data, that is your choice, and you can go ahead and list it here in Part 5 of the Title II Part A application. As a reminder, you are limited to 1,000 characters, so be succinct. Title III Part A, Jennifer already covered with you at the top of this webinar. We wanted to make sure you had the opportunity to get feedback from her and some tips from her. This takes us into Title IV Part A. So this was the first year that Title IV Part A, the way it is now, was rolled out to us, the beginning of the 17-18 year. Part of the option you had with Title IV Part A funding was to transfer it. You have the option here of indicating whether or not you participated in funding transferability with your Title IV Part A funding. That's either a yes or a no. If it is a yes and you had alternative usage of funding, they want you to go ahead and put the percentages that went where. If you transfer 10% to Title I Part A, put your 10 there. If 20% went to Title II Part A, you'd put that 20% there. And with the understanding that at that point you had 70% left, so that stayed in your Title IV Part A. And when we say transfer, it is a loose definition of transferring, meaning the program intent was now added to whatever funding source that you transferred it to, but it's transfer in programmatic intent, not in the physical dollars. Part 2, Section 5211, if you did decide to REAP, if you were eligible for that, you would select yes here and then go ahead and put the percentages that you REAPed and then the activities that was expended for it. If it's a no, if you're not eligible, you'll click no and it will gray out the remainder of Part 2 for you. Part 3 goes into expenditures for usage of funds for Title IV Part A in the way it looked for the 17-18 year. Now, you did have the option of setting aside 2%, a maximum of 2% for direct administrative costs. Of what you have left, if you received $30,000 or more in Title IV Part A allocation for the 17-18 year, a minimum of 20% of your allocation had to be set aside for well-rounded education opportunities. A minimum of 20% had to be set aside to support safe and healthy students, and a minimum of 20% had to be set aside to support effective use of technology. Now, the technology infrastructure, which is number 5 on this report, people are getting slightly confused with this because they see that it says a maximum of 15% of funds. It is not a maximum 15% of your entire Title IV Part A allocation. It is a maximum of 15% of what you set aside from your technology line item, which was line 4. So if I set aside $100 for if my allocation was that small, just for number's sake, if I set aside $100 for technology, that means that I could not set it, well, I shouldn't say $100. Let's say $1,000 because then that number is too small. If I set aside $1,000 for support effective use of technology, 15% would be I could not spend more than $150 towards technology infrastructure. So the program itself, Title IV Part A, your activities, that comes from well-rounded ed, which is your section 4107, safe and healthy students, 4108, and then effective use of technology, section 4109, out of your Title IV Part A. If you receive less than $30,000, then you had the autonomy to decide if you wanted to put all of that funding that you had. Let's say you got the minimum of $10,000, which we have several LEAs that did. You could say, I'm putting all $10,000 to fulfill the activities to support well-rounded education, which is line item 2 here. Or you could split it up and say, I'm putting $2,000 in well-rounded, I'm putting $5,000 in safe and healthy students, and then I'm putting, let's say, that remaining $3,000 in the effective use of technology. And out of that $3,000, I'm going to take the 15% for infrastructure. That's totally up to you. However, if you receive $30,000 or more, it is not an option. You have to fully operate the program, which means you have that minimum of 20% in the well-rounded, safe and healthy, and then technology. The rest of this, the needs assessment portion, all of this is coming straight from statute as well. This should be a yes. If I receive less than 30, I had a process to determine the program or LEA needs. If compliance is yes, describe the process that you use to determine the program and or LEA needs. If one of the things that you did was to engage in actively receiving survey information, you can go ahead and click that box. input of stakeholders through focus groups, you did some advisory committees, select that box. If you locally develop strategies to find out what the needs are for your LEA, that box is an option here. And then you have another pre-populated box of district identified data and reports. If there is something else that you did as an LEA to decide what program process you wanted to come up with or what you used, you can select that other box and then go ahead and put in here what that is. If your compliance status was a no or an NA, as with the other reports, you would have to go ahead and select and indicate an explanation of compliance status. This goes into 30,000 or more, same options. They give you a couple of other pre-populated choices. And then as always, you have the option of selecting other here. This continues with Title IV Part A. It all comes straight from the statute. If you have questions with this, let us know. And this goes into the last page of your Title IV Part A, which is the program evaluation and then assessment of your outcomes. If there's any additional data that you would like to share with the agency, make sure that you include it in this Part 5 box. Also noting that you still have that maximum characters of 1,000. Your Title VIII, this is your compliance report for specifically your safe school option. So that we showed you earlier at the top of the webinar in eGrants itself, but just know for this very first one, everyone should have a yes. Did the LEA request any federal funds in the 17-18 year under the ESSA? Because you are watching this webinar, I'm going to assume that is a yes because you accepted federal funding and now we're at the compliance report stage. Were any students transferred from any campus due to the school being identified as persistently dangerous? That is a yes or a no. If it's a yes, you do have to indicate in this box here how many students actually transferred. Now, Part 2, the violent criminal incidents. We've had several questions come up. What does that mean, a violent criminal incident? When you look at the USDE requirement for Section 8532, it says that a violent criminal incident and then a victimized student, that definition falls under what the state identifies as a violent criminal incident. So I pulled that information from the TEA. If you do need that, let me know. I will forward it to you so that you can see in writing what is considered a violent criminal incident. Part 3, your program implementation requirements. If you received funding, be aware that statute does require that a student attending a persistently dangerous public elementary school or secondary school, or a student who becomes a victim of a violent criminal offense while in or on the grounds of the public elementary or secondary school, must be allowed and offered the opportunity to attend a safe public elementary or secondary school within your LEA. And that does include a public charter school. So compliance status, that's a yes, a no, or NA if this does not apply to you because you did not have the violent criminal incident. If you need additional assistance with completing this form, let us know. This is all here and available to you. We have additional resources if something comes up and you're wanting to know, hey, what else can I add possibly to my board policy to help cover this in the event that something may happen in the future. Your PR 6400, this is also one of the 5 forms that must be completed within eGrants individually by each LEA. If you did not provide services to homeless students through TechShep, click no. The rest of this will close out for you and gray out, and then you click save and you are done. If it is a yes, go ahead and put the corresponding numbers that you see here. It's broken down between ages 0 to 2 or 3 through 5. Gun-Free Schools District Report, the PR 6000. This is another one of the 5 compliance reports that you have to complete within eGrant system, even if you are a member of the SSAs. Did the LEA request federal funds in 17-18 under ESSA? That is a yes. Were any students found to have brought a firearm to school? There is a specific definition of what a firearm is considered in the state of Texas. The statute is there. If you need for us to forward it to you, we can do that as well. If it is a no for you, there were not any students that were found to have brought a firearm, you select no, it would gray that out. Then you just update your information here, who the primary contact is, and then the authorized official would submit their information. You certify, submit, this form is done. If it turns out that this is a yes, you did have a student during the 17-18 year who brought a firearm, click yes. You'll complete the rest of this information, your primary contact, your authorized official, you'll certify and submit. But thereafter, you will get a secondary form that must be completed, which is your Gun-Free Schools Campus Report. If you need assistance with that, you know how to reach us. We will gladly offer additional technical assistance to complete those forms, because there is an additional step that will need to be taken if you answer yes, a student brought a firearm to school during the 17-18 year. This is a glimpse at the PR 6100, the Gun-Free Schools Campus Report, should you have had a student that brought a firearm. This is the last part. This is a continuation of the Gun-Free Schools Campus Report, where you would put in your additional information to submit. If you have any additional questions about this particular application, the Gun-Free Schools Report or the Campus Report, or any of the compliance report that we've gone over with you so far, please do not hesitate to let us know. What I want to show you now are a couple of more important things that we want to remind you of. Now, this is the important dates to remember flyer that we started disseminating at the Federal Programs Director meeting in the spring. We've also shared it at every training we've had since then, and it has gone out several times across the listserv. But as a reminder, August 31st, 2018, SSA members, we need for you to complete the Google Forms that are found on our SSA members webpage, region10.org/SSA. For everyone else, September 4th is the application due for all ISDs. That's your due date if you have not already completed and submitted your ESSA Consolidated Federal Application for 18-19. Now, that is also the due date if you did not have 12-month staff. If you did, then all of this information was due back in June, on June 30th. Last couple of dates that you see there, non-SSA members, the compliance report is due on September 28th. SSA members, again, as a reminder, you will still have to go into eGrants and complete those additional forms on your own, which we will go into momentarily. On October 4th, 2018, that is the final reimbursement due date for SSA members. You must expend and receive all items by September 30, 2018 for any funding from that 17-18 that is not rolling or carrying forward. Please feel free to go ahead and start submitting reimbursement information to Penny and Devonda now. Don't feel as though you have to wait until September 30th or the first week of October to start getting that information in. They will gladly take your reimbursement forms at an earlier time. That way we get everything done in a timely manner. But just know that the actual final reimbursement due date for SSA members is October 4th. So eGrants, I've showed you this already, but I'm going to go ahead and make sure I remind you. You saw this when we were physically logged into the eGrant system. But as a reminder, there are several things that are coming up. The new eGrant system looks completely different, but just know either way it goes, non-SSA members, if you are not a part of the SSA for anything, you still have to update this contact information. And until you do this first one, update the contact information, nothing else will pop up. It will block you at that. But as soon as you save it, the remainder of the compliance report, so all of the other reports based on the federal funding sources that you are the fiscal agent for, will pop up. But again, until you complete that 2110, the rest of the form, the rest of the compliance report will not be made available to you. SSA members, you're going to go to region10.org/SSA and select the ESSA SSA Compliance Report tab. This next piece, that 17-18 guide to answering program implementation questions, we've received several questions about that. Did the agency release one? We've had it for about a month now, and it has been on our website for about a month. So if you just have questions, want additional assistance with those program implementation questions, even if you're not an SSA member, feel free to log on to that site, download the implementation questions, because they will guide you as you complete your compliance reports for 17-18. For SSA members, the compliance reports that you have to complete for all of the federal funded sources that you are a member of the SSA for, are also on that webpage, region10.org/SSA. And this is just a reminder here, even SSA members, even if you're a member of the SSA for everything, we still need you to go ahead and log into your individual eGrants account and complete all of those 5 forms there. That will open again once you've updated your 2110. Now, RLIS, just as an FYI, because some of our LEAs do receive this funding source, the compliance report is available to you. It is on the eGrant site. It is already up, and the due date is September 28th, 2018. Should you need additional assistance with completing that and you received the 1718 RLIS grant funding, please do not hesitate to let us know. We will definitely offer assistance for that as well. This closes out our 2017-2018 ESSA Consolidated Compliance Report. We are the Special Revenue Services team. It is August 16th, 2018. And if we can be of any additional service to you, please do not hesitate to let us know. Thank you for your time, and we hope that you have a phenomenal rest of your day.